In today's guide, we are going to be covering Ahri. Ahri is an AP burst mage who in the current meta is played best in mid lane. Due to her high burst and high mobility, Ahri excels at taking out the enemy ADC and APC. Alright, now let's dive right in and get seduced by her charm. Ahri's Q is her main wave clear and harassment spell. It does magic damage on the way out, and on the way back does true damage. Ahri's W creates 3 orbs around her that automatically target nearby enemies. Each orb will prioritize champions, so if a champion is closer than a minion, it'll attack the champion instead of the minion. Ahri's E shoots out a charm that will briefly cause the enemy hit to harmlessly walk towards Ahri. This also increases Ahri's damage against the target for a few seconds. Ahri's ult allows her to dash a short distance up to 3 times. Each dash also fires off an essence bolt that will hit nearby enemies and prioritize champions. Upon reaching 9 stacks, Ahri's passive will allow her next spell to heal her. As Ahri, you generally want to max Q first as it's your main wave clear and harassment skill. Max W second so that you can maximize your burst. Ahri is really a burst assassin, so if you don't max W second, you're going to be missing out on a lot of damage, especially around level 6. E is more of a late game skill, so you don't need to max it early game. If you feel like you might get ganked at level 2, go ahead and take an early point in E so that you can charm the enemy jungler when he tries to gank you. Try to make sure you have 1 point in each ability by level 3 so that you have your full kit available to you if you start trading. As Ahri, your main focus should be AP damage and survivability. This build gives you a little bit of everything while also maximizing your burst potential. This build focuses on reaching 40% cooldown and also maximizing your burst potential. As Ahri, I recommend a 2109 mastery page. This allows you to maximize your burst potential and also get some stats out of the utility tree. If you feel like playing a little bit safer, go ahead and put 9 points in the defense tree instead of the utility tree. Against an AD mid laner, I suggest taking magic pin marks, armor seals, flat ability power glyphs, and flat ability power quints. Against an AP mid, I suggest taking magic pin marks, health per level seals, flat magic resist glyphs, and flat AP quints. For summoners, I recommend flash no matter what, and if you want to be aggressive in lane and go for kills, take ignite. If you feel like you need to play defensive, say against a Syndra or a burst champion, go ahead and take barrier. And against certain champions like Zed or Fizz, consider taking exhaust to negate their burst damage. Ahri does well against most mid matchups, but she struggles against burst champions. A few examples of Ahri's hardest counters are Annie, Fizz, and Syndra. All 3 of these champions are able to burst Ahri at level 6 and onwards. If you are stuck in this sort of matchup, you have to play passive defensive. If they get their crowd control off on you, you are going to take a ton of damage. Play way back and only go in for last hits or to use your Q to poke down the enemy laner from range. During the first few levels, you will have a small chance to try and poke them down. However, as soon as your opponent hits level 6, you have to start playing defensive. If they land their stun and then ult, you are more than likely going to have to burn summoners, and that's if you survive the burst. Their damage can all be applied during their CC and before you can react. Try and wait until teamfights or for your jungler to come and help before trying to kill them. In these matchups, you will also need an early defensive item such as Zhonya's if you want to survive. Don't try to fight past level 3 or you're more than likely going to lose the exchange. If the enemy lane opponent messes up by mispositioning or wasting spells, then you can start looking for a quick exchange. If you can land an E, quickly follow it with a Q and a W and then run away. If you let them stun you or exchange damage in return, then the whole exchange wasn't worth it. As Ahri, you can't afford to get low HP against a burst lane. As Ahri, your main goal in lane is to get as much CS as you can while also harassing the enemy lane opponent. If you can harass and poke down your lane opponent to about 60% HP, you can start looking for an all-in opportunity. If the enemy lane opponent makes any positioning errors or overextends too far, or if you can land an E followed up by a Q, your W, a couple autos and ignite, most of the time you'll be able to get away with a kill. One thing to keep in mind when you're playing Ahri is pre-6, she is very vulnerable to ganks. You want to make sure not to overextend or push your wave too far, otherwise you're going to end up having to use summoners to escape the gank. Ahri has a very strong burst potential at level 6. If you can land all your abilities, including each proc of your ult, all 3 charges of your Foxfire W, and ignite along with a couple of autos, most of the time you'll be able to burst down enemy squishies in the mid lane. An ideal combo for Ahri at level 6 is to land your E and immediately follow it with a Q so that the Q is guaranteed to hit, dash in with your W and your ult, and then finish off the enemy lane opponent with your last 2 charges of dash, and make sure to throw an ignite if you need the extra damage. Things to remember are that your E enhances all your damage afterwards for a few seconds, and your E also allows you to get a follow-up Q without them being able to flash or dodge the Q. During laning phase, your goal is to stay alive and farm as much as you can get while also harassing the enemy lane opponent. Use your Q to finish off last hits but also hit the enemy lane opponent. Make sure that you're warding up so that you're not getting ganked early on, and if you can push your wave to tower, consider going ahead and roaming top or bot to get a gank off. Once you hit level 6, you're starting to hit your first power spike. Start looking for an all-in opportunity against your lane opponent, or go ahead and roam up top, bottom, or roam with your jungle and look for a kill opportunity. During teamfights, your goal is to take out and burst enemy priority targets. Ahri excels at isolating and killing a target with charm. Once you have your DFG, Ahri's burst is incredibly strong. If you can land your E, followed with a DFG and your full combo, you can 100-0 most squishies. Things to remember during teamfights is that you are squishy, and if you overextend or dive in too soon, you can be bursted down before you can kill your target. Also, make sure your team is ready to follow you up if you do end up diving in. Here are some useful tips to know on Ahri. Thanks for watching my Ahri guide. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all my guides, coaching, and other League related videos.